All right. Hello, class. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of lesson 3 on evolution. This is the big questions of the big ideas of this lesson are about. Again, it's a continuance of what we've been talking about: asking questions, making connections, and trying new things. This is kind of the story of humanity and our human lineage. And our evolution into the modern world and how we have um, evolved with some biological instincts that are not not designed for the modern world. So here we go. So when we open up to these big questions that we've been talking about, we are tapping into something that is of a yeah, what Dr. West describes as higher nature, um, and it taps into an evolutionary track that has allowed us to evolve. So asking questions, making the connections, and trying new things brought us down from the trees and took us to the moon. However, this is the task of your challenge for everybody has to do this challenge for challenge 3, the 14-day challenge. Dr. West does this with his students for 28 days. We're just going to do it for 14 days. My classes in the past have done, students have gone vegetarian for 14 days. They've incorporated roller skating for 14 days, lifting weights for 14 days, meditation for 14 days, giving up fast food and replacing fast food with something healthy. So you're going to give up some sort of bad habit, and that's an option to give up a bad habit or to incorporate a positive habit. But if you give up a bad habit, you should incorporate something that is healthy to replace it. So this challenge is designed to help you experience new things and to reflect upon what you are experiencing by incorporating and building a new habit. Now, a new habit's not going to happen over 14 days. That takes, depending on what kind of behavior you're wanting to incorporate, it takes about 60 days actually. Again, depending on how complex behavior you're trying to incorporate. But this is just a seed that could become something that changes your life. I personally, in my class last semester, I started to set my clock so that when I'm on my computer, I have to get up every hour and do a set of exercises, and it's just a routine that I now do, and it is a habit of mine. I've been doing it for well over the amount of time that it has taken to incorporate it in a habit. Now I feel like if I don't do that, I'm doing something wrong. It's part of my my ritual. So, like I said, it's new habits take a long time to incorporate because we have to think about the human lineage, um, and evolution did not happen overnight, and change in your challenge is not going to happen in 14 days. So um, Charles Lyell was the first to recognize that the Earth has been around for more than the 5,000 or 6,000 years that the Bible was telling humans at the time in the 19th century. But that we actually, in studying geology, this is Charles Lyell's the founder of geology, modern geology, that is. He said that there's actually deep time, and this is 4.5 billion years. Things have been evolving. The same natural forces have been around for 4.5 billion years, formulating human Earth. And if you look at this deep time, this is something that is got. And I'll play this little video. It's a neat little 1-minuter. So you think about deep time, and you know This is a minute and I think a half here clip. Condensing the story that literally has taken billions of years. There's a larger video, larger documentary on that is built into your textbook. It's about 45 minutes. I've got it online on eLearn. Recommend it. You can also take my physical anthropology course and biological. So yeah, let's move on. My biological anthropology course talks about physical anthropology, talks about the human evolution, which is a 7 million year history. And this is the story that we're really wanting to get into here. We're wanting to highlight what's really pretty interesting about this story is, like I said, our lineage goes back 7 million years, and the primates eventually came out of the trees, and that's kind of the roots of our lineage is our ability to walk upright. And we did so in order to adapt to the grasslands and to live on ground and out of the trees, which happened around 6 to 7 million years ago. And when we entered the world of the grasslands, we had to adapt to a new niche, a new environment, new predators. And we eventually harnessed the power to use new tools like fire and stone tools. But going back again, 1 billion years, I'm sorry, 4.5 billion years, the roots of the start of the planet. This has been tracked through scientific understanding, now using dating that is based upon what's called potassium argon dating. Again, take my physical anthropology course, we'll go a little bit deeper into this. But the earliest life came about 3.5 billion years. It's these prokaryote cells, these earliest life cells that are just reproducing themselves. More complex cells, what call eukaryotic cells, came about 1.8 billion years later, at 1.7 billion years ago. So this is hard to wrap our mind around, even to try to put this on the chart, but 3.5 billion years is where the simple cells came about. 2 billion years ago, more complex cells. Around 670 million years ago, we had multicellular animals. So again, it's hard for us to grapple with. The earliest apes around 25 billion years ago, and our human lineage around 5 to 7 million years ago. The Australopithecines came out about 5, but there were some predators to Australopithecines that were Sahelanthropus was around 7 million years ago. So Aurorthan. So again, take my physical anthropology course. We'll learn more about that then. Again, to try to grapple with this just from an imagery perspective, if you look at this image here, this is a fascinating look at a year calendar, excuse me, to try to chart the actual age of the Earth. Start of January is when the Big Bang happened, and going all the way up to it was not till November that those eukaryotic cells, the cells that gave life to us, that emerged to us, and all multicellular life happened in December. So we're talking about January through December, multicellular life evolved. And then going into the last month of December, we did not get to dinosaurs until December the 25th. Hey, Christmas Day, here comes the dinosaurs. And the dinosaurs became extinct on the 30th. In came the evolution, the era of the mammals. And about 8 p.m., the humans broke off from the chimps. So about 7 million years ago, about 8 p.m. So that's about 4 hours before the last day of the year. and human lineage evolved to if you're looking at the cultural artifacts of modern humans, at about the last 5 minutes of time, within the last the last hour, we start to see these cave paintings. So yes, this is just to put us on the scale of we are a blimp in the sea of time. But it's really really important for us to understand this and put this in perspective. And what often is a challenge for especially people that have religious faith, and it's hard for us to grapple with, is this notion of coming from a ancestral primate, and the story of us, quote unquote, evolving from chimps is not necessarily true. We had a common ancestor that we shared with the chimps, but the chimps have been evolving. We've been evolving differently in different directions for millions of years. So we did not come directly from chimps. We co-evolved from a common ancestor. And we know this by looking at the fossil record. This is something that is well documented. But however, just to scan back a little bit and look at this from a larger perspective, when you go to a place like Musselshell Pit in Germany, and you dig down into the Musselshell layers, you're going to find not humans or chimps. You're going to find common ancestors that go back 48 million years ago. And this is something that is a time capsule in itself. That is just extraordinary. You find these. It's a great place to find fossils. And again, we get to talk about this more in my physical anthropology course. You have to have the right environmental conditions to be able to find fossils, and this is the perfect conditions. The deprivation of oxygen in this deep lake allowed for the preservation of these fossils, and you find these ancient snakes and just some diverse mammals that do not exist today, and just really we have the ancestors of these animals, but we do not have these exact animals. That's what you find, these ancient fish, turtles, and various different types of both reptiles and mammals living here. So yes, where we find the most, it's kind of like the gold mine for hominin, the human lineage, is in places like the Rift Valley. It's in Eastern Europe. This is where a predominant number of fossils of human lineage that we find. And in the Rift Valley, you find what makes the Rift Valley, which runs a huge swath of land down East Africa across 3 countries. And it's the separation. So in East Africa, you have the separation of the plates, tectonic plates. In California, you have the crossing over of plates. In Rift Valley, you have the breaking apart of the plates. And those plates separating creates a natural excavation of the land that creates the Nile River. And so every year, water just gets more and more dumped into that. As the separation continues, yes, eventually, millions of years, it will break off. But it's excavating, and scientists can go in and look at the soil being eroded from the breakdown of the dirt from the water, and naturally find existing skeletons, fossils. Also in this area is because of the Rift Valley, the rifting of the plates. You find volcano eruptions that are just shooting out volcanic. They have prehistorically shot out volcanic, and which is really volcanic ash does a great job at preserving dead animals into fossils, which is something there's the fossil record built in there. So yes, take my physical anthropology course. We'll talk a little more about this. And so we find in the fossil record, these 7 million years history, you find that scientists are always filling in the gaps, and the story constantly is changing. Every time we find a new fossil, the story gets filled out. And anthropology is about storytelling. and so much is storytelling. And so what we find here is a story that is evolving as we learn more about the human lineage. And yes, so we can track this common ancestor by looking at the fossil record, by looking at, on the far right, the modern sapien skull. To the far left, you have the chimpanzee, and in between, you have the hominin lineage that has evolved into modern sapien. This is the story that we have been able to tell. Again, I go into this in much more detail in my physical anthropology class. So we all know that we come from Africa. All of us are from Africa. We've all migrated out of Africa. Modern humans came out 100,000 years ago. And there were other early Homo that came out before modern Homo, but modern humans came out, our lineage came out roots of 100,000 years ago, potentially 150, but it's getting more and more known that it's more towards 100,000 years ago. Again, there's a great documentary that's in our eLearn called Mankind Rising that you can check out. It's a longer version of this. So we came out of the trees and into the savannas, and we had to adapt to our new environment, and we had to deal with predators like this creature. So singing and listening. Well, weather is changing and grasslands are overtaking the trees. We have a choice to make. Are we going to stay in the trees or jump into the grass? Well, our ability to communicate and to hear and sing are what we have today. What we have today is that there's roots of this physicality. Our ability to do this goes back to this time period, singing and listening. So scientists, starting with one particular Klaus Zuberhüll, who's got a great Radiolab podcast that has Zuberbühler on it, and I'm not going to play it, but I highly recommend looking up him on the web. But he was the first to figure out in his studies in the forest in Africa. He realized that there were sounds that the Diana monkeys were making when he would go in and study these monkeys, that were communicating with themselves, but also with other species of monkeys and non-primates as well would pick up on their sounds. So this monkey alliance, though, was tapped into when he started to see these patterns of sounds. When a eagle came in, there was a certain noise made that he picked up on, and that set off noises of other species. And then whenever a cheetah came in, a different sound would be made. And yes, David Attenborough explores this as well, which is, I'll play this clip. That's actually a Diana monkey making that deep throatal sound. That is the sound for the cheetah. And what his big aha moment out of this was that, when he was in the woods one time, when he was in the forest, he was studying, and he heard this sound, and he realized, wow, there's something going on, and he realized there was a cheetah, and he was able to change the direction of where he was walking, and he started moving towards the sound, and away from the source of the sound. Away from the sound, which was directing you away from the sound, which is the source of the sound. There was a cheetah, and he realized, oh my God, this is what our ancestors were doing. They were picking up the sounds to find the predators, and it was what we call the monkey alliance, and we were part of that monkey alliance. And it's very much, you could say, consistent with other species and communication. The prairie dog lives in the savannas and grasslands, and also has a complex, scientists have figured out they have a complex set of vocalization, singing to each other. They sing just like primates do. Um, and they come out, they stand up on their back hind legs, bipedal, and they sing to each other. So yes, this is something, singing is something, and vocalization is something that's very, very much important to our evolutionary history. And Fernald was a scientist at Germany's Max Planck Institute, and she was studying the nursery. And in studying the nursery and studying the sounds in the nursery, she started to pick up actually these four songs that were being, and in Germany, this Max Planck Institute, I should say, is a international research institute that primarily looks at, a lot of what they look at is the um, uh, human evolution. Um, but she found, so that you have all these different mothers coming in to see their babies in the nursery, and she was hearing a song, some four different songs being sang by by the mothers in different languages. And these songs go as no, stop, that is like the short staccato, don't, bad girl, don't do that, bad boy, stop that. It's the warning sign, stop. Then there's the praise sound that is like good little girl, and that's that rising low, sort of that rise in intonation. Then there's the sympathy song, poor little thing, kind of high to low. And then there's the question song, which has a very much um, the question song is like, think about the rising intonation of where's the ball? Where's the ball? Where's the ball? So regardless of the human language, this was found. And she took this back to California, to UCLA, and researchers took recordings of mothers in California and traveled with them all over the world to figure out, if this was a universal language. And they did, and they found actually that the most resonating question, or the most resonating song was the question song, which is something that's interesting. So it seems to indicate that asking questions, again, is the foundation of this course, is asking questions. So questions. We ask questions to try to understand things and to make a connection. And through that, we have a way to organize and work with groups. And that's really important, obviously, for our survival, to be able to connect with others, for physical survival and safety. And this connection is something that scientists have tapped into. So if you go back into psychology history, for those who are psychology majors, you will know that Freud was all about the unconscious. And well, one of his students, well, not necessarily directly, but he studied and was a big fan of Freud in the 1940s and 50s, was this guy that was sort of realizing that it's not, John Balding realized that it's not all about the unconscious, but that it is more important to look at actually human relations. And so attachment theory evolved out of a couple of different psychology researchers, including John Bowlby. John Bowlby actually was studying World War II orphans, and realizing that their loss of their connection to their parents was literally this emotional connection that was necessary, almost like a physical pill, like a vitamin. And researchers, continue to follow orphans from World War II, and did realize that they came into diseases and to physical health issues much more prevalently than non-orphan children. So higher rate of disease and physical problems. He also looked at survivors of the concentration camps of World War II from Nazi Germany, and came to a realization that people who survived in these concentration camps that had significant others in the camp with them had a better chance of survival than those that lived alone. The ones that lived alone withered away faster and died faster, and those that had connection. So connection is something that keeps us moving. It keeps us living. and keeps us, you know, in a healthier mindset. So also shortly after this, Harry Harlow, many of you, um, sorry, Haslow, which, yeah, and Harlow, definitely typo on how I spelled it there. Um, he started to do these studies, which no, that's right, I'm sorry. He started to do these studies with these monkeys that definitely sort of took us to another understanding that if you do not have a connection to and this is a data. This would not be done today. It is definitely something that is problematic and has some ethical issues with treating these I think it's capuchin monkeys that very much will removing them from their mothers and replacing them with let's just play it.
Let me show you a monkey raised on a nursing wire mother. Now here are 106's two mothers. As you can see, it was weaned on a wire mother. Here's baby 106. Watch. He's going to the wire mother. He's got to eat to live.
So these monkeys would spend 18 hours of the day on these cloth fake mothers, these wired mothers with cloth around them, but then would go over and feed on the wired mothers that had actually a food source. Now, over the next 20 years, this is evolved into what we call the attachment theory between Harlow's and Bowlby's research. And what's really interesting about these monkeys, they later on in life, they had a difficulty into creating any sort of becoming mothers themselves and having connection to their babies if they had babies. But anyway, so they had serious dysfunctional issues down the road. So connection. James House says the magnitude of risk associated with social isolation is comparable with that of a cigarette smoker. And so it's physically, this lack of connection can be detrimental to primates, including ourselves. So we sing, we connect, and then we ran, but we ran slowly. So if you look at our ability to what is significant to the human lineage is that we became bipedal, and that that actually slowed us down. We're not as fast as a chimp. A chimp that runs on four legs can definitely run us down. They're quadrupeds. We're bipedals. It allowed us a lot of advantage. It allowed us to see the savanna down, to see the horizon, to know what's coming. It also reduces the exposure to the sun in a tropical climate. It allowed us to use our two arms for our upper limbs for carrying stuff. Very advantageous, right? Using weapons and tools, carrying stuff. But we're slower. And definitely these other mammals can run us down, but we can definitely outrun them. So running slow is a positive thing. And to hunt, the bipedal mode actually is much more efficient and we can go much longer. And so how did we hunt? We outran them. This is called a persistence hunt. And we have evidence of that ability to run in the persistence hunt. Humans still do today in the Kalahari Desert. They're able to run for 8 hours to run down an animal. It's something that is still, people run marathons, of course, super marathons, and this is something that is has been studied, of course, by anthropologists and scientists of all sorts. There's a tribe that there's a documentary about that is a native indigenous American tribe called the Tarahumara. And we're going to show a couple clips of these guys.
In the remote Sierra Madre Mountains of northwest Mexico lies Copper Canyon, a rugged region home to a tribe called the Tarahumara, the running people. The Tarahumara have inhabited this terrain for 500 years. Their name comes from their ability to run superhuman distances without running shoes. How do they do it?
So not only do they run super long distances, everybody does in their tribe, but they do it barefooted. And so yes, there's lots of thoughts about barefoot running today. So this endurance running is something that is become pretty a thing, and now that we even have marathons in which man is running against horse, it is something that is definitely what really one of our evolutionary traits that allows us to run for long distances is our ability to sweat. We sweat out the heat. Mammals don't have other mammals do not have that capacity. We also can carry our water to replenish our sweat. So that's a really important ingredient to this evolutionary trait. Back to the Tarahumara.
Answer.
The Tarahumara's abilities to run really long distances really comes from our evolutionary history as hunters. We live in a world that's so different from the world for which we evolved that we have lost a lot of those abilities.
Hundreds of thousands of years ago, early human hunters had to pursue their prey over long distances. They would literally chase animals until they died of heat exhaustion. It's called persistence hunting and is still practiced by the Tarahumara today.
What you do is you run at a speed that makes an animal gallop. Most quadrupeds, the way they cool down is by panting. When an animal gallops, it can't pant, so it slowly heats up and heats up and heats up.
Evolution has provided humans with many ways to endure long distances. Were we born to run?
We have features all throughout our bodies, literally from our heads to our toes, that help us run long distances, both in terms of storing up and releasing mechanical energy, in terms of cooling, in terms of recruiting energy and storing energy. And what the Tarahumara have done is they've kind of kept those mechanisms, and they keep developing them as they grow up. Most of us have those abilities, it's just that we don't use them.
With little or no need for exercise, Dan believes our modern lifestyle is to blame.
Why would you want to persistence hunt nowadays? I mean, we can go to our supermarket, we can buy our meat, fully packaged in a.
So remember that question. Why would you want to persistence hunt today? We can go to the supermarket and buy our meat. Big question there. So let's look at this barefoot running thing. A little side story to this is that late in the 1990s, Stanford started to dominate the national championship in college running or college track, and they were as a whole a very weak team in every event except for, weak, not completely the worst, but definitely weaker than as far as scoring goes compared to other nationally competitive teams. But what made them a national championship team for many years was their distance running. And so Nike actually went and studied this team, this championship team, and found that actually, and their coach, Coach Vin Lananna, actually told Nike, hey, we don't need your shoes, because they wanted to give them shoes. Told Nike that, and because we do barefoot running, and we don't need shoes. So of course Nike had an answer to that, which I'll come back to in a minute. But let's go back to the Tarahumara.
Look going to start you up and we're going to have you walk just to kind of get you warmed up, and then we'll break it into a run. And I want you to just land your natural type of a landing. Okay. We're going to collect some data with you running naturally.
Wearing running shoes, the test subject lands on his heel first. Then the rest of the foot connects. In runners' terms, this is called a heel strike and has long been considered the ideal running style. But the experiment's results offer a different perspective.
This is a skeleton depiction of you running. And that red arrow is actually the ground reaction force as it goes through your heel and through your foot and actually up through your center of mass. Over here in this graph, what you're seeing is this is the ground reaction force as you land. What's interesting about this is that you've got a very distinct impact peak. This impact is the area that we think might be related to injury.
The test suggests that when we run in shoes, there is more impact on both our legs and feet, producing a greater chance of a running-related injury, and that the extra support running shoes provides could work against us.
The shoes are over-supportive, then the muscles aren't working so hard, and if the muscles become weak, then you're going to have a greater tendency to get injured as well.
But is there a difference when the subject runs in bare feet?
So Jason, are you thinking about the way that you're landing, or are you just letting your feet land the way they want to naturally land?
I'm letting my feet naturally land the way they want to land. I feel I'm definitely landing more midfoot, forefoot. I mean, there's definitely less impact.
Now what we're looking at you running barefoot, you can see that you're not landing so much on your heel. Do you see that you have a less distinct impact peak?
I think it's, you know, it's crazy how much the force, the impact, how much less impact there was.
Could we all be superhuman if we ran without shoes? Probably not.
So this gets us into talking a little bit about our culture today and how it has masked our and impacted our evolutionary traits, our physical traits that we've evolved to have. Our culture has caused problems. Now, back to Nike, of course, they had an answer. And what you see now is a huge market niche of barefoot running shoes. And I won't play this, but they had eventually came out with a shoe lineage of barefoot running shoes. So yes, the Vibram world, it's big. I don't suggest somebody to just go out and start running barefoot right off the bat, but definitely if you do make that step towards barefoot running and start working with shoes like this, do so gradually. So Dan Lieberman's question: why would you want to persistence hunt today? We can go to the supermarket and buy our meat. This leads us to talking about what we call mismatched diseases. Mismatched diseases are a product of a combination of factors. We have too much of something. Well, first off, our adaptation developed over millions of years in the woodlands and open grasslands, a place where food was often very low, calories were difficult to come by. So when you did find them, you would store it up, right? You would eat lots of them because you might not find something for a long time. And so, you know, we have now we have calories all around us to take advantage of. This is also a place where cats were large and constant threat to our lives. So they weren't domesticated pets. So we had this constant sense of danger. We needed to be aware and collecting information all around us. This was a place where we had to walk or run to get our food. So we were constantly physical exercise was built into our reality. And it was a place where there was a strong desire for like I mentioned, storage of calories was really important. And it's a place where a stress reaction that fueled adrenaline, that was a rush in our body that could save our lives, and that dopamine, that adrenaline rush and dopamine reaction was something that was really important to our survival to get away from predators. They didn't have to sneak in exercise every day. So mismatched diseases result from too much of something, too much food, too much fat and sugar in particular. We crave fat and sugar from our evolutionary past, but we have too much of it today. We have too little of movement. We have things like long-term stress instead of the short-term cheetah that was just adrenaline rush. Now we have long-term stresses that endure for years upon years. That's not something that we evolved to respond to, but now we have to deal with. Robert Sapolsky says that this is a great biological anthropologist who studied primates, monkeys, primarily orangutans. I mean, sorry. Yeah, he studied mostly the God, I'm blanking on the name of the monkey that he studied, but he studied monkeys that were very physically aggressive and studied violence in monkey groups, and very much has had much to say to our human pronation towards violence and towards nonviolence as well, from learning from monkeys. But he says most of us will have the profound westernized luxury of dropping dead someday from a stress-related disease. So it is something that we believe this is part of our natural life cycle now, and we do so through overeating, lack of exercise, high stress, which leads to obesity and heart disease, high blood pressure, many different features that are related to these mismatched diseases. And really, you got to go back to evolution of our brain and how it has changed over time. What has given us an advantage is this giant brain of ours, and our neocortex grew as our energy source became more abundant, and we were able to feed our brains with proteins and energy-rich food. So our neocortex grew, and we became more and more controlled by culture, because our neocortex put this overlay of culture in our lives. It gave us the ability to create tools that were useful for survival, but our tools now are kind of counterproductive, and less by impulse. Impulse is driven by actually this neocortex, the reptilian brain. This is the craving for calories. Our culture can override that. However, but our reasoning and our logic that is driven by the neocortex creates what we call bad habits. And we're more ruled by habit today than we are by instinct. And so that's what we need to look at, is these bad habits of our lives. As our neocortex grew, we became more and more controlled by culture, and less by impulse, and more by reason, less by instinct, and more by habit. So you have these habits, routines to improve speed and efficiency. These habits are efficient. You think about, there's something that sets off a habit. There's some sort of signal that sets it off. Habits are controlled by that reptilian root that is very much drives our habits. And like I said, there's environmental cues that sets off these habits. You think about when you wake up in the morning, that alarm goes off. We all have a ritual of what we do in the morning when we get up. And there's chunks of behavior that you think back in the mornings, like, oh, what did I do? Did I do that? Did I actually get up in the morning? You're not even conscious of when you get up and what you do after you get up. There's a cue, the alarm goes off, and you automatically go into auto mode, right? And you do chunks of behavior that are cued by our environment, and to the point where we're not even thinking about it. To change a habit, you have to study these cues. You got to study the alarm that trigger the habit in order to reflect upon it and change it. Sometimes this requires changing your environment. So this is the what we're really trying to approach in this this chapter is how to change our habits, and how do we consciously override these habits that are not healthy for us. And really, we have to look at and examine supernormal stimuli. And supernormal stimuli have been studied by one particular Nobel Prize winner in physiology, Nico Tinbergen. He and his students studied the Dutch biologist studied the super stimuli in other species, and he looked at other species of animals like birds, songbirds. Parents would actually feed their baby birds with mouths wider and redder than their real chicks. So they would create these fake babies, and the parents would feed the fake ones because they had wider and redder beaks. And so the hatchlings themselves, the babies themselves, would actually ignore their own parents to beg fake beaks and more dramatic markings. So they would beg from fake parents because the fake parents had beaks that were had supernormal stimulus that do not exist naturally. You get where I'm going with this. These species are become craving fake, overstimulating environmental stimuli that were not real, and did so in stickleback fish as well, and very much found this in many different domains of species. Songbirds would abandon their pale blue eggs dappled with gray and sit on the fancy black polka dotted fluorescent blue dummies that the scientists were creating. So anyway, this is something that he used this to look at human beings, and human beings ourselves are living in this world where our instincts from hunting and gathering have been replaced in a completely different environment with the same sort of impulse that is governed by habits and not our instincts anymore. Our technologies and population densities have undergone amazing change in such a short time. Evolution has had not chance to keep pace. So our world is changing, our environment's changing so fast that we aren't keeping up. Our brains are the same as our hunter-gatherer ancestors, and the instincts honed to seek rare rewards in a world of scarcity. That's where we came from, but now we have an abundance, and a supernormal stimuli surrounds us. And so we develop addictions to food, to the world of the internet, through movies. We sit motionless for hours watching shows that are about fake characters of lives that are not real, and we are engrossed in a world of the internet that is a constant source of information. Remember, we evolved the need to be aware of our environment. We needed to know where the cheetah was coming from, what sounds to pay attention to in order to survive that cheetah. And so now that's been it's been superimposed upon a world of the internet where we have constant source, where we're constantly being stimulated with different sources of information, and we're not learning it. It's just going through our brains. It's not deepening into our incorporating into deep learning. So obviously pornography, addiction to sex, all these different addictions come from these super stimuli. So this is not to say we need to give up all the super stimuli, but we need to find a balance with it. How much is enough? And that's one thing that, of course, we want to try to think about here. And what we have is a conscious, our ability to think, and we have to make and to confront the super stimuli. We need to use our willpower, and we have to be conscious of it and be aware of it so that we can change it. We can override the reptilian brain with our mammalian brain that we've evolved. And this is, we have the choice to override the super dosing on super stimuli. So we can put on our glasses and see the super stimuli, and we can make adjustments to our behavior. So this is something that we have this sort of oversensitization. I'm going to skip through this. There's this cycle of no pleasure, willpower, stress, seeking supernormal stimuli that provides a dopamine rush. We go through this period of no pleasure. Our willpower, it breaks down from the stress. We seek supernormal stimuli, and we get a dopamine rush from the supernormal stimuli. Then eventually we have this numbing down of our sensitivity to the stimuli, and we need more and more. It is like that notion of drug addiction. The heroin addict who the first dose only needs a little bit of stimulus of heroin, but then you need more and more and more because you become numb to the impact of it. So another really important ingredient to humanity is our ability to try new things. And we will go to such extreme that we'll try just about anything. This is a story of Julie Moss, who was a college student in 1982, who just up and decided in Hawaii to run a marathon. And this sort of takes us to the story.
While there had been a lead change among the women.
By the way, this was on ABC News, Worldwide of Sports.
23-year-old Julie Moss, the former college student from Los Ojos, California, had moved ahead of Pat Hines.
Moss came to the Ironman as a college student, just trying to get a degree. No one could have imagined she'd find herself in the lead so late in the race.
Hey, guys! Find out how far back she is.
The she Moss was asking about was Kathleen McCartney, who was in second place in the women's event, nearly 20 minutes behind Julie when the marathon began. As night fell in Kailua Kona, an exhausted Julie Moss was clearly in trouble. Quickly back on her feet, but again her body said no more. Moss would walk methodically down Ali'i Drive, now just a few hundred yards from the finish line. Just 30 yards from victory, Moss fights against a body that is shutting down. ABC's cameras captured this drama.
So we'll come back to Julie Moss. Never ran a marathon, was not a big runner, decided to just test herself, and she found herself in the lead. And with 30 yards left, she is on the cusp of doing something really amazing. We'll come back to her. Trying new things. Here's another great story, Jasper Lawrence. Jasper Lawrence is a man that was huge, just had this huge amount of allergies and suffering heavily with allergies. He was just this ordinary guy with a really bad allergy and asthma condition that and he fell in love with a woman that moved to a town in which he couldn't find any work, so he had to become a gardener, and that's not the best job to have as somebody with allergies. And he ended up becoming hospitalized time and time again, and he just wanted to do something. He did not want to leave his partner, and so he was desperate. He was looking on. He had heard that actually hookworms were good for people. There were some scientific reports coming out, this was in the early 2000s, that hookworms are a good thing to consider for reducing allergies, and that people in parts of the world where you have hookworms on a regular basis, there are no allergies. So he started to seek out hookworms, and he realized you can't find hookworms. And he went on the internet, this early days of internet, and so he flies down to African villages and finds out where they have bathrooms with open latrines with 110 degree stench, and walks through them over the course of about 2 weeks, goes to 30 different villages, and just thinks, okay, he's now got hookworms in his system. He has to have hookworms. So he returns to the States, and he believes he has it, but he has to wait till allergy season to come around. And lo and behold, when allergy season comes running around, he does not have allergies. They are gone. So he is a complete believer in hookworms, and he markets, he was living in the States at the time, and he's from Great Britain, and he started to market hookworms and started to harvest them in his own body and sell them online. And this went along for a while, and then the government came down on him and said, you got to stop this. This is not acceptable. We don't know if this is scientifically sound research. And so he and his wife moved to back to Great Britain, where he's from, and he continues. He can't sell them to the States, but he can definitely. That's what he still does. And now there is lots of more evidence since then that hookworms are a great benefit to not only for allergies, but for other sources of health problems. And really what it comes down to is that we co-evolved with hookworms. And we now, there's definitely a lot of new research that says that hookworms can be used to fight MS, Crohn's disease, and other physical issues. But we've had these parasites through all of our existence, and we've co-evolved together in symbiosis. But today we live in this very much, this hygienic override of any sort of exposure to hookworms. And so hookworms, actually what they do is they actually sing somewhat of a lullaby for our immune system to quiet down and keeps it from overreacting to things in our environment. And so the cleaner lifestyle, we never get exposed to these things. Anyway, again, that's a cultural override to our biological evolution. So back to Julie Moss. She is at the finish line, and her body is quickly breaking down, and she gets passed by the woman that was in second place, and she's people around her trying to encourage her and trying to give her a hand. She refuses their help. And in an interview, she is talking to, this is a Radio-Lab interview again. Let me see if I can find it, find her little.
Yep. All the while, he'll shoot their muscles full of sugar, like with an IV.
And you can actually get...
No, just lost it. Well, she says in this interview, she says that she's on her hands and knees. She's actually pooped on herself. She's just made a mess of herself, and she's got national news covering her just this amazing feat that she's trying to accomplish. And something in her says, get up. And there's a voice in her that says, get up. And she gets up, but her getting up is actually getting off her face and starting to crawl. She crawls inch by inch, and she crosses the finish line. And that voice with her stayed with her, and still to this day is something that continues to propel her, to challenge her in everything in life. She's now a big spokesperson for Ironman. This launched Ironman as a major feature and world competition. Yes, this voice, and I'm asking you to find that voice in yourself. In the 14-day challenge, you're going to explore how you learn, exercise your willpower. Choose something that's easily measurable, something that you know that you can see a change in because it's measurable. It's something that is, for example, doing 10 push-ups. Shoot, if you've never done a push-up before, start doing a couple. Just you can measure something like that. What you're working on here in this challenge is mastering mastery. You're working on yourself. You're working to develop a voice in yourself that says, get up. And this 14-day challenge is something that is going to come with two different things. You're going to post on the discussion board what you're going to be doing. You're going to check in with your class at day 7. I want you to check in as many times as you want with your class as you do this 14-day challenge. At the end of 14 days, you're going to do a reflection again on the discussion board, but also you have a reflection that you need to turn into Dropbox. So a planning and a reflection that needs to go in the Dropbox. So you need to look at eLearn to see the details of that. But so you got both the discussion board and the Dropbox. Again, there's more details to be had on eLearn. Thank you very much. Have a good day or night or morning.